July 17, 1944, Normandy hedgerow country, France. Obersturmfuhrer Michael Wittmann adjusted his Tiger I commander's periscope, tracking the American column moving along the sunken road below his concealed position. Through the dust kicked up by their treads, he counted 12 M4 Sherman tanks, blocky, ungainly machines that German tankers had dismissively nicknamed Tommy Cookers and Ronsons after the cigarette lighter that claimed to light the first time, every time. Wittmann, already a legend with 138 confirmed tank kills, allowed himself a predatory smile. His Tiger mounted an 88mm gun that could penetrate a Sherman's frontal armor at 2 kilometers. The Sherman's 75mm gun would bounce harmlessly off his Tiger's frontal plate at any range. This would be target practice. "They send boys in tin cans to fight us," he transmitted to his crew. "The Americans understand nothing about armored warfare." What Wittmann didn't know, what none of the German panzer commanders circling like wolves in the Norman bocage could have imagined, was that those 12 Shermans he was about to engage represented less than 0.03% of American tank production. That in the time it would take him to destroy them, American factories would have built 24 more. That the fundamental mathematics of industrial warfare were about to make German tactical superiority completely irrelevant. This is the story of how American mass production defeated German engineering excellence, how quantity became its own form of quality, and how German tank crews' laughter turned to despair as they discovered that killing 5 Shermans meant nothing when 6 more arrived the next morning. The German Panzer Force entered 1944 supremely confident in their technical superiority, and by every measurable metric, they were right to be confident. The Panther tank, Germany's primary medium tank by 1944, mounted a long-barreled 75mm gun that could penetrate 140 millimeters of armor at 1,000 meters. Its own frontal armor, 80 millimeters at 55 degrees, was virtually immune to the Sherman's standard 75mm gun at combat ranges. German tank commanders regularly destroyed Shermans at ranges where American return fire was completely ineffective. The Tiger I was even more formidable. Its 88mm gun could kill a Sherman at 3,500 meters, while the Sherman had to close to under 200 meters and target weak points to even have a chance. One Tiger at Villers-Bocage had destroyed 14 tanks and 15 other vehicles in 15 minutes on June 13, 1944. The Tiger II, beginning to reach units in mid-1944, was practically invulnerable from the front. Its 150mm frontal armor could defeat any Allied tank gun in existence. Its long 88mm gun could penetrate any Allied tank at any range. German tankers had every reason to feel superior. Hauptmann Hans von Luck, commanding a panzer regiment in Normandy, wrote in his diary, "The American Sherman is a death trap. Thin armor, gasoline engine that burns at the first hit, ammunition storage that explodes catastrophically. Our Panthers destroy them at ranges where they cannot even see us. I almost feel sorry for the American tank crews. Almost." SS Obersturmbannführer Jochen Paper, one of Germany's most decorated tank commanders, was more blunt. 5 Shermans for every Panther is not a fair fight for the Shermans. We've proven this repeatedly. The Americans are sending their tank crews to certain death. German training manuals reflected this confidence. Panzer tactics emphasized long-range gunnery, exploitation of superior optics, and aggressive maneuver. German tank commanders were taught to press their advantages, knowing their machines were simply better. Wehrmacht intelligence officers analyzing American tank production in early 1944 reported to Berlin, "The Americans are mass-producing the M4 Sherman, an inferior design that prioritizes production speed over combat effectiveness. While they may achieve numerical superiority, quality will prevail. One German panzer is worth 5 American tanks. This assessment would prove catastrophically wrong, but not for the reasons German intelligence imagined. What German analysts failed to understand was that the Americans had deliberately designed the Sherman around completely different principles. Not the best tank, but the best tank that could be mass-produced, shipped across oceans, maintained in the field with limited training, and kept operational under combat conditions. The Sherman wasn't supposed to win one-on-one duels with Panthers and Tigers. It was supposed to be everywhere, always, in overwhelming numbers that made individual superiority irrelevant. But in July 1944, German tank commanders hadn't yet grasped this reality. They saw American tanks burning in Normandy fields and assumed they were winning. The numbers that would doom German armored forces were already written in American production schedules, but German intelligence either didn't have access to them or couldn't believe them. Between 1,942 and 1,945, American industry produced 49,234 Sherman tanks. Let me repeat that number: 49,234 tanks of a single basic design. To put this in perspective, Germany produced approximately 6,000 Panther tanks total, about 1,350 Tiger Is, roughly 490 Tiger IIs. The entire German tank production of all types, from 1,939 to 1,945, was approximately 25,000 vehicles. America produced nearly twice that many of just one tank model. But raw numbers tell only part of the story. The Sherman represented something revolutionary: the complete industrialization of tank production through interchangeable parts, modular assembly, and distributed manufacturing. 11 major plants built Sherman hulls: Chrysler's Detroit Tank Arsenal, Ford's Highland Park facility, Pacific Car and Foundry, Press Steel Car Company, Baldwin Locomotive Works, American Locomotive Company, Lima Locomotive Works, Pullman Standard Car Company, Federal Machine and Welder Company, and Fisher Body Grand Blanc. Each plant built Shermans that were functionally identical. A transmission from Detroit could be installed in a hull from Lima. An engine from Grand Blanc could power a tank assembled in Philadelphia. This interchangeability was revolutionary. German tanks were effectively handcrafted, with parts requiring individual fitting. The Chrysler Detroit Tank Arsenal epitomized American production philosophy. Built on empty farmland in just 6 months, the facility covered 113 acres under one roof. At peak production in March 1943, the plant completed one Sherman every 55 minutes, operating 24 hours a day. Tank production followed automobile assembly line principles. The hull moved down a line where specialized workers performed specific tasks. Armor plates, pre-cut and drilled at other facilities, were welded in place. Suspensions, manufactured at yet another plant, were installed as complete assemblies. Engines arrived as sealed units, dropped into place, and connected in minutes. A German Panther required approximately 55,000 man-hours to build. A Sherman required 10,000 man-hours. American factories could build 5 Shermans in the time it took to build one Panther. The workforce itself reflected American industrial capacity. At the Detroit Tank Arsenal, 40% of workers were women. Rosie the Riveter wasn't just propaganda. Women welders, machine operators, and quality inspectors built the tanks that would defeat Germany. Otto Carius, a German tank ace with 150 kills who survived the war, later wrote, "We didn't understand what we were facing. We thought tank warfare was about having the best tank. The Americans understood it was about having enough tanks. They approached warfare like Ford built, cars standardized, interchangeable, produced in overwhelming quantities. The supply chain supporting Sherman production was equally impressive. Armor plate came from steel mills in Pennsylvania, Indiana, and Ohio. Engines were built in 3 separate Continental aviation plants. Transmissions came from 5 different manufacturers. Final drives, tracks, radios, weapons, ammunition. Each component had multiple suppliers, ensuring that no single bottleneck could halt production. When the Panther tank factory in Germany was bombed, Panther production stopped until repairs were completed. When one Sherman plant had problems, the other 10 continued without interruption. German industry, organized around specialized production and craft quality, simply couldn't match this distributed, standardized approach. They had better engineers designing better individual tanks. America had better systems building adequate tanks faster than Germany could destroy them. The shipping logistics were equally staggering. A Sherman weighed 30 tons. America shipped over 1.4 million tons of Sherman tanks across the Atlantic, plus spare parts, ammunition, and fuel. Liberty ships delivered them by the hundreds. By D-Day, over 2,000 Shermans had been staged in Britain. By the end of 1944, that number exceeded 8,000. German panzer divisions received replacement tanks through a complex system involving rail transport, recovery of battlefield wrecks, and workshop rebuilding. An American armored division received a continuous stream of factory-fresh Shermans shipped directly from Detroit. The maintenance philosophy differed fundamentally. German tanks were designed to be repaired, with mechanics trained to rebuild engines, repair transmissions, and fix complex systems. American tanks were designed to have components replaced. A bad transmission? Swap it out in 3 hours with a new one. Engine problems? Drop in a replacement engine. This replace, don't repair approach kept operational rates dramatically higher. Lieutenant Belton Cooper, who served with the 3rd Armored Division Maintenance Battalion, documented this advantage. We could replace a Sherman engine in the field in under 2 hours. The whole process was designed around quick replacement. We had spare engines, transmissions, final drives, everything. A tank that would have been a total loss in the German army was back in action the same day. By August 1944, American replacement rates exceeded German destruction rates. For every Sherman knocked out, 1.2 replacement Shermans arrived. The German kill ratio became irrelevant. They were drowning in American steel. The actual experience of tank versus tank combat in 1944 revealed both the Sherman's weaknesses and its unexpected strengths. Lieutenant August Sander, commanding a Panther and Panzerlehr division, recorded his first engagement with Shermans on June 13, 1944. We engaged 6 American tanks at 1,800 meters. My gunner destroyed 3 in rapid succession. The other 3 withdrew behind bocage. I reported confidently that we had stopped their advance. 2 hours later, 8 more Shermans attacked from a different direction. Where were they getting so many tanks? This pattern repeated across Normandy. German tanks would win tactical engagements decisively, only to face fresh American tanks hours later. The psychological impact was devastating. But the Sherman's weaknesses were real and deadly. The 75mm gun couldn't penetrate Panther frontal armor. The gasoline engine was more prone to fire than diesel. Ammunition storage in the sponsons could explode catastrophically when hit. American tank crews called the Sherman Ronson for the same reason Germans did it lit the first time, every time. Tank ace Oberleutnant Barkman described an engagement near St. Lo. I destroyed 9 Shermans in 7 minutes. They kept coming, one after another, knowing they couldn't hurt my Panther frontally, but trying anyway. Brave men in inadequate machines. It was slaughter, not combat. American tank crews were well aware of their disadvantages. Sergeant Lafayette Poole, who would become America's top tank ace, wrote home, "The Sherman is a death trap against German heavy tanks. Our 75mm gun just bounces off their frontal armor. We have to get around to the sides or rear, which means closing into their killing zone. We lose 3 or 4 tanks for every Panther we kill. But American doctrine adapted to these realities. Since individual Shermans couldn't match Panthers, American tactics emphasized coordinated action. 5 Shermans working together could almost always defeat one Panther. One would draw fire while others maneuvered to flanking positions. Staff Sergeant Clyde Davies described the standard approach. We called it swarming. The lead tank would engage the German, knowing he'd probably die. While the German was targeting him, the rest of us would move to firing positions. Someone would get a side shot. It was brutal, but it worked. We accepted losses because we knew replacements were coming. This acceptance of casualties shocked German tankers accustomed to preserving irreplaceable equipment. SS Hauptsturmführer Michael Wittmann noted, "The Americans expend tanks like we expend ammunition. They send formations into killing zones, accept catastrophic losses, and continue attacking with fresh tanks. This is not warfare as we understand it. It's industrial attrition." The Sherman's advantages became apparent over sustained operations. While German tanks were mechanically superior, they were also mechanically complex. Panthers suffered from transmission failures, engine fires, and suspension problems. Tigers were notorious for breaking down. The Tiger II was so heavy and mechanically unreliable that many broke down before reaching combat. The Sherman, built to automobile standards, with proven components, was remarkably reliable. The Continental R 975 radial engine, originally designed for aircraft, could run for thousands of miles. The transmission, though underpowered for upgrades, rarely failed. The suspension system was simple and robust. Lieutenant Colonel Wilson M. Hawkins, commanding the 3rd Armored Regiment's maintenance operations, kept detailed statistics. Our operational readiness rate averaged 85%. We could keep 85 out of every 100 Shermans running at any given time. German intelligence told us their operational rates dropped below 50% during prolonged operations. Mechanical superiority meant nothing if the tanks didn't run. This reliability advantage compounded over time. In a 2-week offensive, a German panzer division might start with 100 operational tanks and end with 40, even without combat losses, just breakdowns. An American armored division would maintain 85 to 90 tanks operational throughout, and losses would be replaced. The Sherman also proved surprisingly survivable in ways that didn't show in penetration statistics. Its spacious interior gave crews room to move and escape. The spring-loaded hatches could be opened instantly. British tankers in Normandy nicknamed it the second chance tank because crew survival rates were exceptional compared to British Churchills or Cromwells. American tanker Sergeant Nicholas Mashlonick survived 5 Sherman knockouts. The Sherman had a reputation as a death trap, but it saved my life 5 times. Each time we were hit, we could get out fast. The hatches worked even when the tank was damaged. I knew guys who survived 3, 4, even 6 knockouts. You couldn't do that in a Panther. Their hatches jammed when the hull was hit. By late August 1944, German after-action reports reflected growing concern about the implications of American production. General Feldmarschall Gunther von Kluge wrote to Berlin, "We have destroyed hundreds of enemy tanks. The Americans appear not to notice. Their armored formations maintain consistent strength regardless of losses. This suggests replacement rates we cannot match. Without addressing this numerical disparity, tactical superiority is meaningless." In August 1944, German tank crews began encountering something unexpected: Shermans that could fight back effectively. The Sherman EZ-8, the M4 A3E8 with horizontal volute spring suspension and a 76mm high-velocity gun started arriving in Europe in late summer. The 76mm gun could penetrate Panther side armor at combat ranges and Tiger armor from optimal angles. More importantly, it gave American crews a weapon that Germans had to respect. Hauptmann Hans Becker recorded his first encounter with the upgraded Shermans. We engaged what appeared to be standard American tanks at 1,200 meters. My Panther was hit immediately, a penetrating hit that killed my gunner. This should have been impossible. Intelligence said the Sherman 75 couldn't hurt us frontally at that range. We withdrew rapidly, suddenly vulnerable to weapons we dismissed as harmless. The 76mm Sherman wasn't individually superior to German heavy tanks, but it was adequate, and adequate tanks arriving in unlimited quantities changed everything. Even more dramatic was the arrival of the M4 A3E2 Jumbo Sherman assault tank. With frontal armor increased to 100mm and a new cast transmission housing, the Jumbo could withstand Panther gunfire frontally. It sacrificed speed for protection, but it gave American formations what they desperately needed, a tank that could lead attacks without being instantly destroyed. Sergeant Lafayette Poole's "In the Mood," a 76mm Sherman, exemplified what trained crews could achieve with upgraded equipment. Between June and September 1944, Poole's crew destroyed 258 enemy vehicles, including 12 tanks. Poole survived being knocked out 3 times, returning to combat in new tanks each time. But the most feared American tank was one most people have never heard of, the British Sherman Firefly with a 17-pounder gun. While technically a British upgrade, these tanks equipped American units increasingly through late 1944. The 17-pounder could penetrate Tiger II armor at combat ranges. Suddenly, American formations included tanks that German heavy tanks had to fear. Oberscharführer Rudolf von Ribbentrop, son of the foreign minister and a Tiger commander, encountered Fireflies in August 1944. We engaged American tanks confidently. Then my Tiger was hit hard. Penetration through frontal armor, something I thought impossible. I saw the attacker, a Sherman with an unusually long gun barrel. Later we learned these Fireflies could kill any German tank. They changed our tactics immediately. We could no longer advance confidently against Sherman formations. The psychological impact of these upgrades was profound. German tankers had relied on technical superiority. Now, they faced opponents who could hurt them, arriving in ever greater numbers. SS Hauptsturmführer Ernst Barkmann, credited with 82 tank kills, wrote in September 1944, "The Americans have learned. Their fielding improved Shermans with guns that demand respect. Plus, they maintain their numerical advantage. We used to calculate that we could defeat 5 Shermans per German tank. Now the ratio is perhaps 2 to 1, and they have 10 Shermans for every Panther. The mathematics have become impossible." American production adapted to combat feedback with stunning speed. Reports of Sherman vulnerabilities reached Detroit in weeks. Engineers designed solutions in days. Modified tanks rolled off production lines within months. The famous wet storage ammunition racks surrounded by water jackets to prevent fires were standard by early 1944, reducing brew-up rates by 80%. German industry couldn't match this responsive production cycle. When Panther transmission problems were identified, fixing them required redesigning components, retooling factories, and implementing changes across a distributed production network that often took a year or more. The Americans simply iterated faster. Problem identified, solution designed, change implemented, new tanks delivered. The production system itself was a weapon. By September 1944, the mathematical reality of American production had become undeniable to even the most confident German commanders. General der Panzertruppen Hasso von Manteuffel, commanding 5th Panzer Army, received intelligence reports that quantified the impossible situation. American armored strength in theater. Approximately 4,500 Sherman tanks operational. German panzer strength. Approximately 700 tanks total, all types. American monthly replacement rate, 600 tanks. German monthly production of all types, 350 tanks, of which fewer than 200 reached the Western Front. Conclusion: we are losing a war of attrition we cannot win. The operational implications were catastrophic. German panzer divisions, nominally equipped with 200-plus tanks, operated at 30–40% strength. American armored divisions maintained 80–90% of authorized strength continuously. A German panzer division that lost 50 tanks in a week might receive 5 to 10 replacements if lucky. An American armored division losing 50 Shermans would receive 50 to 60 replacements within days, often arriving with trained crews. The Battle of Aricourt in September 1944 exemplified this asymmetry. The 4th Armored Division faced the 5th Panzer Army in what should have been an even battle, approximately 200 American tanks versus 262 German tanks, including 86 Panthers. The Germans held terrain advantage and tactical surprise. They had technically superior tanks. They were commanded by von Manteuffel, one of Germany's best panzer generals. They lost decisively. American forces destroyed or captured 281 German tanks, 114 other vehicles, and numerous guns. American losses: 31 Shermans knocked out, of which 26 were back in service within 48 hours after field repairs or crew replacement. The 4th Armored Division never dropped below 85% tank strength during the entire battle. Colonel Bruce Clark, commanding Combat Command A of the 4th Armored, described the American advantage. We could afford to trade tanks. They couldn't. When we lost a Sherman, a replacement arrived the next day. When they lost a Panther, it was gone forever. This allowed us to be aggressive, where they had to be cautious. We owned the battlefield through pure volume. German commanders began requesting transfers to other fronts. Eastern Front combat, despite its horrors, at least offered hope of tactical victories. The Western Front was a meat grinder where killing 5 enemy tanks only meant facing 6 more the next day. Oberst Hans Ulrich Rudel, though a pilot rather than tanker, captured the despair spreading through German armored forces. Our tank crews report destroying American tanks by the dozens. Yet American armored strength increases daily. They've solved warfare. Infinite production makes tactical victory meaningless. We're fighting mathematics, and mathematics always wins. The Christmas 1944 Ardennes Offensive, the Battle of the Bulge, represented Germany's last major armored operation in the West. They assembled approximately 1,400 tanks and assault guns, a massive concentration that stripped the Eastern Front. Initial attacks achieved surprise and local successes. German tanks destroyed hundreds of American vehicles. Kampfgruppe Piper, the most successful German formation, penetrated 30 miles in 48 hours. Then American reinforcements arrived. Within 1 week, more Shermans were in the Ardennes than Germany had committed to the entire offensive. The 2nd and 3rd Armored Divisions arrived from the north. The 4th Armored Division drove up from the south. The 10th Armored Division held Bastogne. The 11th Armored Division deployed to block escape routes. By early January 1945, American armored strength in the Ardennes exceeded 1,500 tanks more than they'd had before the offensive began. German strength had dropped below 400 operational vehicles. General Feldmarschall Walter Model, commanding Army Group B, sent a desperate assessment to Berlin. The offensive has failed. We inflicted significant losses, but American armored strength has actually increased. They have unlimited reserves. We have none. Every tank we lose is irreplaceable. Every tank they lose is replaced within 24 hours. Continuation of offensive operations is mathematically impossible. The Americans were applying industrial war principles perfectly. Accept losses, replace them immediately, maintain operational tempo. German tactical excellence couldn't overcome this systematic approach. By early 1945, German tank crews no longer mocked the Sherman. They feared it not for its individual capabilities, but for what it represented: unstoppable industrial might. Hauptmann Helmut Rittgen, commanding a Panther company in the Rhineland, wrote, "We've stopped using the dismissive nicknames. Tommy Cooker isn't funny when 5 more arrive for every one you destroy." The Sherman is the perfect expression of American warfare. Adequate quality in crushing quantities. They've made adequacy into a weapon we cannot defeat. Captured German tankers provided detailed assessments that Allied intelligence found remarkably sophisticated. They understood exactly why they were losing. A March 1945 interrogation report quotes SS Oberscharführer Wilhelm Weber, "The Sherman in 1944 was inferior to our tanks individually, but you had 10 Shermans for every Panther. By late 1944, you had better Shermans in the same overwhelming numbers. We became paralyzed. Destroy 5 Shermans, face 7 more. No matter how many small victories we achieved, you just kept coming. That's not warfare, it's drowning in American steel." The psychological impact extended beyond tank crews. German infantry learned to dread the sound of radial engines and squeaking tracks that announced Sherman formations. Unlike German tanks, which had to be husbanded carefully and deployed strategically, Shermans appeared everywhere, constantly, in formations that could afford to be aggressive because losses didn't matter. Gefreiter Klaus Hartmann, who fought against American armor in the Ruhr Pocket, remembered, "When you heard Tigers or Panthers, you knew approximately how many there were. Germany didn't have that many. When you heard Shermans, it meant nothing. Could be 5, could be 50. They were like ants. Kill a few, more appear." The sound of those radial engines meant defeat was coming, inevitably, unstoppably. The final numbers tell a story that transcends individual tank battles. Total Sherman production: 49,234 tanks. German Panther production: approximately 6,000. German Tiger I production: approximately 1,350. German Tiger II production: approximately 490. Total German tank production: all types, 1,939 to 1,945. Approximately 25,000. America produced nearly twice as many Shermans alone as Germany produced tanks total during the entire war. Sherman variants served with the U.S. Army, U.S. Marines, British, Canadian, Free French, Polish, Soviet, Brazilian, and numerous other forces. More nations used Shermans than any other tank in history. Combat losses in Europe: approximately 6,000 Shermans destroyed beyond repair. Yet American armored strength never decreased. That's the power of building 49,000 tanks. The Sherman remained in service for decades after World War II. Israeli Shermans fought Arab armor through the 1,970 seconds. South American nations operated Shermans into the 1,990 seconds. The basic design proved so adaptable that modern variants served 50-plus years after the last one rolled off American assembly lines. Otto Carius, the German tank ace who survived the war, wrote in his memoirs, "We had better tanks. They had enough tanks. In total war, enough always beats better." The Americans understood something we never did, that warfare at industrial scale isn't about quality, it's about quantity, sustainability, and the systematic application of adequate force in overwhelming volume. The Sherman wasn't the best tank of World War II. It probably wasn't even in the top 5 for technical specifications. But it was the most important tank of the war because it could be built in quantities that made German tactical superiority irrelevant. German tank crews stopped laughing when they realized American factories were building 5 Shermans for every Panther they destroyed. By then, they were already drowning in the steel tide that American industry had unleashed. The M4 Sherman didn't win through individual excellence. It won through mathematics, through production, through the systematic industrial might of a nation that had learned to build complexity at scale. It was democracy's tank, adequate, reliable, and unstoppable, because America could make it faster than Germany could kill it. That's how American industry defeated German engineering, not through building better tanks, but through building enough tanks that better became irrelevant. If this story of American industrial might surprised you, you'll want to see what else we've uncovered from World War II's hidden histories. We've got dozens of similar stories, the weapons, technologies, and innovations that actually won the war, not through individual heroics, but through systematic American industrial power. Hit that subscribe button right now and ring the notification bell so you never miss these incredible true stories. We're releasing new content every week that reveals the real secrets of how America's factories, not just its soldiers, won World War II. Drop a comment below telling us what surprised you most about this story. Was it the production numbers? The German perspective? The fact that adequacy in overwhelming quantity beat excellence in limited numbers? Subscribe to War Rewind, where we dig deeper into the real stories of how industrial democracy defeated totalitarian tyranny, one factory at a time. See you in the next video.